Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Lee County Zoning Board of Appeals Thursday, January 4th, 2024 meeting. First thing on the agenda is to call the roll.
Bruce Forrester,
Here.
Craig Burrow,
Here.
Mike Pratt, not present. Rex Meyer, not present. Luke Phelan.
Here.
Okay. The next part of the agenda is not on this list, but I would like to introduce Luke Phelan, who is a new member to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and he's joined us tonight. The next thing is the approval of the previous minutes from the previous meeting. We'll bypass that tonight. And the next thing on the agenda is a motion to adjourn pursuant to the county board's vote on the petitions 23-P-1616 by Wiggins Solar LLC special use petition, B 23-P-1618 by First State Bank for a variance, and C 23-P-1619 by Crest Food Company Incorporated, and that was a map amendment. So if we could have a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
We hear a second.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. New business for tonight. We're going to do this a little bit out of order from what I have here on the agenda, but we're going to start with petition number 23-P-1617 by Stewart Creek Solar LLC. This petitioner is seeking a special use permit for a purpose of a commercial solar energy facility, and we're going to open this petition tonight, and then we will continue it until we get a facilitator, which will be on the 16th. Correct?
Correct. There will be a facilitator overseeing this hearing. He was not available tonight, and so we will continue it by your vote to January 16th at 6 p.m. to start taking testimony on the petition.
But we needed to open the meeting tonight so that we could continue it to the 16th.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. So if we could have a motion to continue this petition till the 16th.
I move to continue the petition for Maple Road Solar.
No,
Oh,
that one.
that one. Thought you want that one.
Stewart Solar.
Oh, that one. Oh, thought you were going to do. Okay.
Right.
Excuse me.
Stewart Creek.
Yeah, Stewart Creek. I move to move it to postpone or delay.
Continue it.
Continue it, excuse me. Continue Stewart Creek until the next meeting.
Until the 16th of January.
Yes.
Which will be our next meeting. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Now, on to the other new business. The next petition is petition number 23-P or AP-1620 by Maples Road Solar 1 LLC. Petitioner has submitted an appeal to the Lee County Zoning Administrator's determination dated November 2nd, 2023. You can go right there. We put one there for you.
Oh, geez, thank you. For those who don't know, my name is Courtney Kennedy. I'm here as local counsel for Maples Road Solar One LLC. We are here on our appeal of the Lee County Zoning Administrator's determination that she made back in November of 2023. Just to give you a high-level view of the procedural history of this, back on February 17th of 2023, Maples Road filed its petition for a special use permit for a 5-megawatt community solar farm. It was going to be situated on 35.3 acres of farmland, referenced under PIN 07-0236 400-008. You'll hear me refer to two terms. There's the leasehold area for this project, which is as stated, that 35.3 acre portion. But the leasehold area is actually situated on property that's approximately 299 acres in size. And I believe the project parcel is pulled up on the GIS screen right there. The project back in February was permitted under ordinance number 11-22-008, which regulated solar energy systems. And the project obtained a special use permit from the Lee County Board on May 25th of 2023. Under that then existing ordinance, paragraph B20 provided a visual screen that the applicant must provide, and the exact language of the ordinance reads that a visual screen is defined as a visual barrier which, through the use of vegetative landscaping, opaque fencing, or approved combination thereof, is of such nature and density that provides year-round opacity and screen structures and activities on the parcel from a single-story dwelling viewpoint. Later on in the ordinance, under paragraph D12, it sets forth various requirements of that vegetative screening. Most notably, however, is that the visual screening option has to be provided to an owner of any adjacent non-participating dwelling. And it sets forth that the applicant either has to provide a one-time payment equal to the cost, design, installation, maintenance, and removal of that visual screen, or actually physically install that visual screen on the property being leased by the solar energy system. And that would be immediately adjacent on the property line. The ordinance that this project was permitted under does not define what an adjacent non-participating dwelling is. And that's exactly why we're here tonight. I do think it's worth noting that during the hearing on the special use permit, this issue came up. It was raised during testimony. But there was no condition entered as to this issue, and there was no condition or clarification provided by the Lee County Board when it voted on the petition. Back in October, Maples Road requested a formal determination from the Lee County Zoning Administrator concerning the screening requirements and the ambiguities in the language of the ordinance. Now, I want to make it clear, and it's worth noting that Maples Road is willing to provide the screening. It wants to comply with the terms of the ordinance. So that's not the issue here tonight. It's just we want clarification for that. And I'll get into that here in a second. Our position is that the screening requirements of this ordinance should apply to adjacent non-participating dwellings located immediately adjacent to and bordering the leasehold area. That is the 35.3 acre portion of the project itself. On November 2nd, 2023, the Lee County Zoning Office issued their formal determination that the term adjacent non-participating dwelling means any dwelling that is owned by a person who is not a party to the proposed use and that sits on a parcel that shares property lines with the project parcel. And so looking at the map that I've provided to you, this is actually a site plan that was presented during the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing on the special use permit. You can see a portion of the parent or the project parcel, excuse me, that's outlined in black here. The area outlined in red would be the leasehold area, what I refer to as a leasehold area. That's that 35.3 acre portion of the project. Some of you may recall that to the north, there's a subdivision. And I believe there was testimony during the hearing that that subdivision to the north is, I want to say, just shy of 1,000 feet to the actual leasehold area. And so using the zoning administrator's determination, that screening would have to be provided on the boundary of the project parcel. So immediately adjacent to that subdivision, the company would either have to offer that one-time payment, which could result in, if each owner in that subdivision elects for a different option, we could have no screen, screen, no screen. I mean, it could be varying. And then properties to the west here, I believe are close to 900 feet away from the actual leasehold area. There would be screening there. And then you'll see a parcel to the south of this gravel access road on this map. It's owned by the DPG Trust. You can read it in real small letters there. There would, of course, be screening up that gravel access road if that landowner elected to receive that. And then there's also, while you can't see it on this map, if we could have on the GIS map, if you could show the southern boundary of this project, or the parent parcel, excuse me. Thank you. There could be an additional screening in that southwest corner there as well. And so that's why we're here tonight. We've appealed that determination, and we're asking the Zoning Board of Appeals to interpret the term adjacent non-participating dwelling. Our position is, again, that it should mean any dwelling that is owned by a person who is not a party to the proposed use and that sits on a parcel that shares a property line with the leasehold area or boundary of the leased area of the solar energy system. And we feel this way for a variety of reasons. The first of which, by requiring us to provide screening on the boundary of the project parcel, it presents a whole slew of issues. Number one, that the biggest issue, in my opinion, is a legal issue where the applicant doesn't have a leasehold right to install anything on that boundary there. We have site control of the actual leasehold area. We don't have site control to put anything here. So, I mean, we can't put something where we don't have the legal right to be. Notwithstanding that issue, I believe it commits agricultural waste. You're going to take more agricultural land out of production to set back to install that visual screen. And quite frankly, I believe it directly contradicts the spirit of the ordinance itself. I sat through just about every Renewable Energy Committee meeting when we talked about fashioning that ordinance. There was input from various committee members and even members of the public. The committee was excellent in that it balanced concerns of the public with that of developers. And I distinctly remember the purpose of the screening was to shield those adjacent landowners, the non-participating adjacent landowners, from being in close proximity to a solar project. Right when that committee was constructing or crafting that ordinance, I believe that it was doing so with utility scale projects in mind, where you would really want to have visual screening. I don't think it took into account this exact scenario where you have a small solar project situated on a greater parcel. I understand that one of the concerns in making a decision like this would be what kind of precedent this board is setting for future issues that might arise that are similar to this. And so I dug into the issue. I asked Alice to tell me how many projects have been permitted under this same ordinance so that you would have a better idea, what size and scale projects that this issue could arise in the future. And I believe there's been 3 community solar projects permitted under this ordinance, one of which being, of course, Maples Road, and then Amboy Solar 1 and Amboy Solar 2. So, I don't believe that any negative precedent would be set by, confirming our interpretation of this ordinance. It wouldn't apply to any utility scale projects where there's a greater concern, I would say, to have the screening. I think it makes more sense in this scenario, using our interpretation, the screening would be in place for the owner of the DPG Trust, here, this parcel that's immediately south of that gravel access road. So I'm here to answer any questions you have.
Courtney, you've done a lot of investigation and whatnot on this. Is there a footage possibly you think that might be inserted into something like this about it? If it's, if the neighbor's over so many feet away, you wouldn't do it or something like that? Is any comments along those?
I think that could be something that's written in, but I don't know that could be resolved in this particular situation, because I think you have to, well, and I suppose that would go to how you define adjacent non-participating dwelling. Maybe you could fashion it into your definition of that. I understand the need to have screening, even with community scale projects, because I do think that you want to protect your adjacent non-participating landowners. But I just think it's impractical in this exact scenario with so many of them being so far away from the actual project by virtue of it being set in on such a large parcel.
If I remember, remember this parcel also, it has a strange topography to it. also.
Exactly. And you might remember that from the testimony during this hearing. It actually slopes back, which is why the landowner decided to situate the farm on this particular parcel and at the, in the exact location because it does slope downward. There was some drainage issues, I recall. So, I mean, it's my opinion that even if you look at the subdivision to the north, because of that topography and the slope, they're not going to be able to see the solar farm from where they're at, screening or no screening at this point. I think there's other impracticalities. And again, it's almost like it's the perfect storm right now, right? You've got the subdivision to the north. With the way the ordinance is written, if you give them the option of electing the one-time payment, which I think is a great idea, it's not exactly functional in this example because you're going to have, it could be so inconsistent across the board. And I think, uniformity is something that we would want for a visual screen too, but that's just a separate issue.
Was there any language, any place about how long a screening has to be? In other words, if your house is there and you're looking at this parcel, it's close to a quarter mile wide. Would someone have to have, 100 yards of screening or something like that? Then, like you say, the next person may just don't care because they can't see it anyway, and just take the money.
Right. My understanding is that the visual screen has to remain in place for the life of the project. And then once the project is decommissioned, that screen is also removed. If the landowner elects to have it remain in place, of course it would stay, and then my understanding too is it's got to be, it's almost like staggered rows. So 2 rows of like trees or shrubbery staggered
Right.
to help it. It's got to reach a certain height within so many years, and you've got to maintain that for the life of the project.
If I remember correctly, in some of the other ones where we were a landowner that was on the opposite side of the road, when you came out the front door, you looked straight ahead and there was a certain angle. But I don't remember what the angle was. I think it was 45 degrees each direction on those setbacks. In that situation, because you've got basically houses all the way around and looking at the screening and where you would like to be or whatever, technically all of these are backyards instead of front yards. It's not like you're coming out your front door and looking at it. But the second thing is, I think to me, it would be better to have everybody agree either no or yes, because it's too confusing to have, as you say, every other one. Screen, no screen, screen, no screen, because they overlap anyway.
Can I interject at some
What's that?
point?
What's that?
Can I jump in?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, that is incorrect. When it comes to a platted subdivision, according to the ordinance, a platted subdivision shall have a visual screen designed, installed, maintained, and ultimately removed by the applicant. All of those houses to the north, except 2 of them, I believe, are in a platted subdivision. Therefore, there would be uniformity for those homes. There's 2 homes on the end, I believe, on the east side of that subdivision that would not, they would have the option to choose a screen or a payment. So I just wanted to clarify that real quick.
You say there's 2 on the end?
Jonathan, can you scroll up and maybe zoom in to the north property line?
So Alice,
Yep.
again, you said that if it's a platted subdivision, they don't have the option. It's gonna
They
be
do not.
screened. Okay.
The code tells them that they get the screen. They don't get to pick a payment. The screen will be there for those homes that are in that subdivision. So at the very top, you can kind of see those green lines.
Yes.
That is the subdivision lines. So the 2 homes to, I believe it's 2 homes to the east would get the option, but those homes to the west would have to have the screen. Or potentially would qualify for the screen.
But they are not looking directly at the,
So, did you have more questions for Courtney? Because I do have comments that I would like to introduce.
okay, but I'm just saying, if those are in the subdivision and whatever, they do not have direct sight out the backyard, straight out to this site.
I would need proof of that.
Huh?
I would need proof of that.
Okay. All right.
And the screening cannot be on their property line. It needs to be in the field then, basically.
What the code states is that the screen will be installed on the property being leased by the SES immediately adjacent to the property line. So it does relegate that that fence needs to be on property that they lease and adjacent to the property line. So it doesn't say it has to be on the property line, it just has to be adjacent to the property line.
But they're not leasing the land up by the subdivision. though.
Right. So they would have to place it on their land that they're leasing adjacent to the property line. So it may be, 900 feet away from that property line, but it would have to run adjacent to that property line.
Which means they have to move a fence back in that property. Because the screening would be on the outside or the inside, because some people would have an objection to looking at the fence.
So the screening, I believe, is on the outside typically. That is what the developers want because otherwise it interferes with their projects. So usually it's planned on the exterior.
So Alice, if I understand you correctly, the screening, like looking at the map that I've got printed out, it would be around the boundary of the red, the area in red, right? So it would be on the entire north side because that would be,
So essentially, what I'm looking at is the code. So what my code is directing me to do is for screening in an effort, it states, in an effort to help minimize the visual impacts of an SES on adjacent non-participating dwellings from a single-story dwelling viewpoint. So to me, if they can prove or a homeowner can prove one way or another that they are impacted or not impacted by this, I would need proof. So if the homeowner comes to me and says, I'm looking out my kitchen window and I can see this array. Well, you're being impacted from a first story viewpoint, screening would apply. Now, if the company comes to me and says, we've been at their house, we've taken these photos and all you see is a hill. Are they being impacted by the SES? That is what I have to look at. So if they are not being visually impacted by the SES, I would not require a screen because there is nothing that is impacting them. So if the company can prove to me that those homes have no visual impact and will not suffer any visual impact over the 35 years of their project, then I wouldn't require them to build a screen because there is nothing to screen at that point.
it's-
So
Sorry, if I can jump, isn't that a little bit like the chicken and the egg though? Because how are we going to be able to prove the negative when the if the solar farm's not built? So when you're standing on the adjacent property line and you're saying, well, yeah, you're not going to be able to see this, how are you going to be able to tell until it's actually built when that ordinance requirement requires us to reach out to the landowner before the building permit is pulled? We have to provide proof of that. So like, how will we be able to prove a negative?
So,
before
I
it's-
mean, and this is something, this section is not perfect, and this is kind of, we've struggled with this. So we would probably have to make conditions of a permit that it would be done at a later time. I have to rely on what's in the code. That's all I can go by, and that's all the county can go by. So just to go through my points, on February 17th, 2023, a petition for special use was received by the Lee County Zoning Office from petitioner Maple Road Solar One LLC. According to the petition, the special use permit is being sought for parcel identification number 070236400008. That is the entire parcel, not 35 acres, not a portion of. The petition is requesting a special use for what is defined as PIN number 070236400008. So on May 25th, 2023, the Lee County Board passed a resolution number 2023-05001, in which it granted a special use permit for PIN number 070236400008 to Maple Road Solar 1 with conditions. So that special use currently applies to that entire parcel. That is what I have in writing. Ordinance number 1122008 is the amendment of the Lee County Solar Energy Systems Ordinance. And that is the ordinance that is governing the Maple Road Solar 1 project. This ordinance does not define, nor does it refer to any term that is leasehold area. Therefore, in my opinion, this term is irrelevant to the petition. We don't account for a leasehold area in our ordinance. It's not defined. It's not referred to. That is something that is referred to during the hearings to kind of help people understand if we're referring to the whole parcel or just the leasehold area. But that is not defined by our ordinance. The same ordinance, it does not define the term adjacent non-participating. However, the petition filed by the petitioner does define the parcel in question, which kind of leaves us to assume that they're referring to the project as a whole. Further, in their application, they did not include a legal description for the so-called leasehold area. In my opinion, that would make it impossible for you guys to define what is adjacent to a leased area that is not defined in your application. We're looking at the parcel as a whole, not the end product. Another thing to consider, and we've seen this in wind projects as well, they also petition for the parcel as a whole. The project gets built. The wind turbine is parceled off. It becomes its own parcel number. Similar thing will happen at the end of this project. But one of the things that we know about special use petitions is that sometimes the project area moves. We've had turbines that have had to move because of, they start digging and it's not a viable area. For all we know, they could start construction and say, this isn't going to work in this area. Now we're going to move it to this side of the parcel. So we have to consider the project parcel, the parcel as a whole that's stated in their petition, not this vague leasehold area that may or may not be where it is defined in their hearing. Couple of things that were also referenced. It was stated that the project will lack uniformity. Again, uniformity is not a function of our current solar ordinance governing this project. It does not say that screening has to be uniform. It gives the options, it lays out what is required for a platted subdivision, and it gives the options to any other owner that is not in a platted subdivision that is adjacent to that original parcel that's not participating in the project. That term has been used in other applications for special use permits for the purpose of solar energy production and has always been interpreted by the county to mean that parcels that are adjacent to the parcel on which the project will be constructed, whose owners have not signed a contract to participate in said project. Furthermore, in their original application for their petition, they're going through, they set out the county setback requirements, and they use the term, and we're able to define setbacks for any foundation of an adjacent non-participating primary dwelling. They stated that the required setback is 400, and then they stated that apparently the nearest home is 743 feet away. So they were able to make that determination for the purpose of their application, and I'm not sure why it would not apply now. Another point that was brought up, the project may prevent the owner of the project parcel from effectively farming the remainder of the project parcel. In my opinion, this is not a concern of the county. The county is concerned with what is in the ordinance, and that is left up to the farmer and the company to work out. So if the county says you have to comply with this and the farmer doesn't like it, that's not our concern. We have a code, the county has approved it, and it is our job to uphold that. Lastly, it states that several landowners who are adjacent to the project parcel are close to 1,000 feet away from the leasehold area. Again, our ordinance does not state that homes within a certain distance shall qualify. It says adjacent non-participating dwellings. That is the language that we are dealing with. It is not perfect, but this is what we have to rely on in order to do our jobs. We have to follow that code that has been approved by the board. So that is my interpretation. Ms. Kennedy stated that 3 petitions fall under this ordinance, but the language is similar throughout several ordinances. So to assume that this would only impact 3 projects is not correct. This could impact more than those 3 projects. The reference to the Renewable Energy Committee. Again, their intent is irrelevant. What we have is the code that we have before us, and that's what we have to use to make our determinations. Not intent, not assumptions, but what is in our code. Again, it was brought up that, whether a resident is looking out their front door or back door. Again, it doesn't matter. The ordinance states that from a single-story dwelling viewpoint, that's what we have to go with, not whether they're looking at it at their front door or their east window or their back door. Single-story dwelling viewpoint. That's what we have to figure out. So it is my opinion that the term adjacent non-participating would apply to any parcel that is adjacent to the original parcel stated in the petition whose owner is not a participant of that project being proposed. Any questions?
Alice, you did this in consulting with the state's attorney then? You've talked to them?
I have had Stephanie review my comments.
Stephanie, does your office take a position with respect to tonight's hearing?
No, our office doesn't take a position. This is a policy determination, which is appropriate for the purview of the zoning administrator and then the zoning board of appeals.
I have a few comments if the board would consider them. So I don't necessarily agree with the statement that the intent is irrelevant of the ordinance. So when you go into contract law interpretation, the first thing a court is going to do is look at the term to see if it's ambiguous. So looking at the ordinance on its face, is the term adjacent non-participating residence, is it ambiguous? And I think it is. And an ambiguity means, is it subject to more than one reasonable interpretation? So in looking at this, I think it's clear just by virtue of the zoning office's position that it means one thing and our position that it means another. So then what a reviewing court will do is look at the remainder of the document and then dig into other extrinsic factors. Intent is one of those factors. And that's where it comes into play what took place at that Renewable Energy Committee meeting. I'm not asking you to find the term leasehold area in the ordinance. What we're asking you to do is define the term adjacent non-participating residence. We've proposed that to mean properties immediately adjacent to the leasehold area, which would mean the project leased by the actual solar energy system. To respond to one of the other comments, my understanding when no matter what type of special use permit is sought, you have to apply for the entire project parcel, what I refer to as the entire project parcel. In this case, it was the entire 299 acres. But you narrow it down, and then that special use permit is restricted to the actual area used. And so I think that supports our argument that it should be restricted to the actual area of the SUP. So again, we're just asking you to define what the term is, to set a definition, to give us guidance moving forward. Even using the current interpretation of it, the screening, as I understand it, would have to be on the northern area. If you look at the map that I've handed out, the site plan, excuse me, the screening would have to be on the northern boundary of this red line. But then it gets, again, unclear as to the west side of this line, where would we have to stop? Because there's 3 residences to the west. I mean, would we have to physically stand on their property line if they allow us to see how far they can see or how far we think they can see the solar farm? I just think there's way too many questions and ambiguities. And that's why we're asking this board to set a definition for that. And I think even if you adapt our proposed definition of adjacent non-participating residents, you're still going to cover utility scale projects, right? Because they lease the entire project parcel. So you're still protecting adjacent non-participating residents from that area. And I think it's a reasonable interpretation that fits for community solar and still fits for utility scale. And I also just want to add, I respect the zoning office's determination. I just think this is the perfect storm. It's the perfect scenario that calls into question.
Question is, though, we have an ordinance that we have to deal with today. And we're not saying that it's perfect. We're not saying it's perfect. You're not saying it's perfect. But we have to figure out how to make it more perfect for the future. But it becomes the problem of what do we do now? Because we're not ones that make ordinances. So. My part that's hard with this is, to me, the way this looks to me at this point is you've given options of screening or non-screening, paid out or not paid out. And to me, with the amount of non-participating owners around there, I don't think there should be a choice. I think it should be one or the other. it should be either screen the whole project or get paid out for the whole project. That's my opinion.
Yeah, this is a different situation with as many adjacent people, homeowners in this one compared to some of the other ones. We may have one that we deal with, and I think you're probably right there. It looks like we're gonna have to screen the whole north and west. That's what it looks like.
That's pretty much the way it looks to me. You either screen it or you don't screen it.
Courtney, you haven't brought up cost, but is there a rough cost figure that they told you about per 100 feet or something to do this?
Sure, let me bring up Tom Ryan. Tom is from the companies with me here tonight. Answer that.
Yes, excuse me. We did get a cost estimate from a licensed Illinois landscape architect. As we did, though, we did it around the leasehold area, as Alice said, and Courtney said, we can't actually do anything on the land that's not leased. So we have an estimated cost surrounding the whole entire leasehold area with an opaque fence at $83,000. So the main question of what we were looking at is what you just brought up, is whether or not the landowner would want it or not. We didn't want it to be some kind of a candy cane checkerboard appearance.
Right.
But yeah, we came to $83,000 from the landscape architect. But that was around the entire leasehold area,
All four sides?
all four sides, yeah.
I just,
It would be how much?
$83,000
$83,000.
for opaque fencing.
okay. It wasn't really affecting it, but I didn't know how many dollars we were talking about.
Yeah, no,
to
it gives you
begin
a better
with.
idea. So yeah, the main question was just whether if one landowner said they wanted it and another didn't from 900 feet away, it would kind of defeat the purpose of having.
Correct.
And we would even be willing to take some other route if we just didn't want to have to double the pay to give them a one-time payout and then also pay for an opaque fencing. So we're just trying to figure that part out.
Any other? What's that?
Comments?
I'm going to ask that. I just wanted to know if you had any more questions first. Okay. Anybody from
Public.
the audience have questions?
Thank you. First of all, I know this is not an easy job for the ZBA. It's not any easier when the county board gets involved. But we all have to work together. We already know that one. But on the other hand, I know it's the ZBA's responsibility to enforce the codes. And that's whether we agree with them or not. My concern is that if we're going to change the rules in the middle of a project, I'm afraid this is going to start a precedent where all of a sudden everybody starts thinking, hey, I don't like this. Well, it's not like grabbing your ball and go home. Here we are. Now we're going to tie up more time because obviously the ZBA is going to be involved in a lot of this. The county's going to be involved in a lot of this. I'll agree with everybody. I've gone through the ordinances and few of us have. Do we agree with everything? They're not perfect. We know that. We do the best we can to make them good for everybody. And maybe out of this, we can only suggest. But I don't think trying to change the rules now is fair. Not only to developers, but to the people. The people in this area, we all got to be friendly. We know this, and this is the hardest part of developers. I know this is a hard thing for them and property owners that want to, get their properties involved. It causes hard feelings. I know you guys hear it because I hear it too. But that's life. And one should have the right to their property. I agree with that. But I think by now, after the SUPs have gone through, and now we want to change the ground rules, I don't think that's fair.
I don't think what I'm suggesting is trying to change the ground rules on this. I'm trying to make a suggestion, and I don't know whether they've tried this or anything, if they've just taken a poll of all of those people around there to decide whether they want screening or whether they don't want screening. Because the issue becomes, as he says, if you want screening and it's supposed to cover a little bit to the sides so that you can do, it's also covering somebody else's that would be in there, and they say, I don't want screening, I want money. That means they got to put the fence up anyway and pay them. And that's the way I'm interpreting what they're looking at.
I can understand that idea.
All I'm saying is, can you get the owners that are there and qualify to take a vote on it and just see what everybody wants to do?
I'm not gonna,
Because we've talked about this before on one of the things about people, and I'm just going through this from what we've done in testimony before, is some people will choose not to have the screening. They would rather get paid, and then they use the money to landscape their own yard to do their own screening.
I'm not gonna say I disagree with that, but my feeling on that is when this project was getting started, why wasn't this done prior to? Go around to the neighbor and say, if this goes through, are you opposed to this idea or that idea? So at least you've got that to approach.
I understand.
And then we take, I guess, yeah, even if you take a vote, but once again, it's throwing the burden back on ordinances.
I understand that. But I don't think anybody wants to take that vote until they know that they've got the project. And then it's too late, and our ordinance doesn't specify it quite the way, doesn't specify it in a tight enough manner, is basically what I'm saying. So I'm not sure that we can do anything about this ordinance. I'm not sure that we can do anything about this appeal. But I would also make a suggestion that we modify going forward what we do.
I don't disagree with that, Ms. Forster, I agree. This issue is unfortunate where it's at, but yes, let it go to them.
Our job here is to interpret whether following the ordinance. That's
Right.
That's what we do.
And your suggestion, I'm sure, is going to be looked at without a doubt by zoning and others. There's no doubt in my mind. It's got to be. And I'm sure Ms. Hinkle isn't opposed to that either. She has a good rapport with the people that are on that committee, I can tell you that.
No, I understand that. So, anyway. Craig, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. You guys talked a little bit about changing ordinance away. I think our language, which would be the ordinance changes, what we're talking about. And as you mentioned, the way I'm interpreting now would be those two sides, north and west, and a little bit of the south. And basically, the adjacent people would not have a choice of what they want to do, just because of the situation with so many of them.
And before you guys get too far down in your discussion, your job as the zoning board of appeals is to hear and decide determinations. So it was my determination of what the definition of adjacent non-participating is. That was the determination made. Courtney is appealing that. So your job here tonight is determine whether to uphold my decision or not. So just to try to simplify things for you, we're not here to change ordinance or anything. We're here on a determination that was made by this office that is being appealed. So just to clarify that.
Anybody else in the room have anything to say?
Thank you.
What's that?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay.
Courtney, I got another question. The company, are they appealing because of the cost of the fence, you think, or just the number of neighbors and the confusion of money or fencing type of thing?
I think in large part, it's due to the confusion. I do know that they've run cost estimates around just to see how much it would impact the project. But, and just one point I want to make clear, we're not trying to change the rules, and we're not trying to, you know, to get out of any of the requirements under the ordinance. I truly think that there is an ambiguity as to that term, and so we're asking for clarification so we can fulfill our obligations under the ordinance. I just think that's an important distinction to make.
I'm not sure that we can make that clarification.
So we either vote to agree with
With,
Alice's determination. And if we don't, then we're saying the ordinance isn't apply here, or
we can agree with Alice, but say that we need to amend the ordinance in some way for the future.
I think the problem is we've discussed this and we still don't know how to amend it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We would like the state's attorney to help us on that portion.
Clarification.
Yeah.
Now we have to take a vote tonight.
You have to make a motion.
Based on all the discussion we've had, I move that we, zoning board agrees with our administrator's position.
Okay, is that a motion? Do
That's a motion.
we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
We're sorry. Any other business?
That would be all.
Okay.
I did just, in side notes, I don't know if you guys are aware, but my office, Dee retired Monday, or Tuesday, technically. Tuesday morning was her last day, and I have assumed the position of zoning administrator. Further, my office has hired a new deputy zoning administrator. Her name is Laura Mangrum, so you might be meeting her or talking to her in the future. So just wanted to let you know. That's all.
So with that, we need to have a motion to continue our meeting forward.
I move we continue this meeting till January 16th at 6 PM.
For the Stewart Solar.
Solar.
And
You can recess, actually. You just
and then we
motion to
can
recess.
recess. And then
Until the
the appeal
16th.
will go to the county board.
No, you are the final decider
We are the
on the
final
appeal.
deciders. Okay. Okay. We need a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
We have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.